Ahoy hoy, I'm Planetwalk, and recently I came across a video and just by the thumbnail I thought, oh, this looks like a Minute Earth video, so I clicked on it, and it turns out that it wasn't. The video was by Apologetics Squared, which I found to be fairly logically flawed, so let's take a look at it.
William Lane Craig's formulation and presentation of the Kalam is by far the most popular. It involves two parts: a short syllogism, which Craig usually puts on screen in his debates and stuff, and then a conceptual analysis of the universe's cause, which he usually just explains verbally. Now, this particular presentation has led some to mistakenly take the term the Kalam to refer to the syllogism only, rather than Craig's entire argument.
So I think, yes, most people are aware of the basics of the Kalam Cosmological argument. And that is essentially that everything that we see has a cause, so therefore the universe itself must have had a cause. That's paraphrasing it a bit, but that's the general gist. That part is fine. It's when you try and say that that cause must have been God that you run into issues. But I'm sure that Apologetics Squared will give a good justification for why that cause has to be God. Right?
This seems to be responsible for objections, like Matt Dillahunty's, that the Kalam isn't an argument for God's existence, just some generic cause of the universe. This is an annoying objection, because it in no way actually objects to Craig's real argument, and it makes it look like the argument has some sort of flaw which isn't there.
To be fair, I have heard people in favour of that argument state that God must exist because the universe had to have had a cause. Obviously the rebuttal mentioned does work against that particular argument, but it may not necessarily work against an argument which provides reasons for why that cause must be a god. But you are going to have a very difficult time explaining why that cause must be a god.
Now, why do I think this is a presentation problem? It's because a cosmological argument actually does act as evidence for the existence of God, even if you only present the first stage. It would be a weaker argument for God, but it would still be evidence that he exists.
Well, not really. It's like me trying to give evidence that invisible green pixies exist, and I say, well, things fall, and that's evidence for it. No, it's not. For it to actually be evidence of the thing that I'm claiming that it's evidence for, I need to take the step of showing why it's actually evidence for the thing that I'm claiming that it's evidence for. Otherwise, you could claim that literally anything is just evidence of whatever you say it's evidence for. For example, I could say that we both live in a time where I exist. Therefore, that's evidence that I am God. You see how that's a non sequitur? If you do not make an argument for how the universe having a cause is evidence of God, then that's just simply a non sequitur.
In explaining why, I'll focus on the contingency argument. Most arguments for God's existence can be boiled down to, hey, this feature of reality is predicted by theism, and it's not predicted as well by alternative theories.
Okay, here's where I'd get into the problem that I have with astrology. Because astrology is really good at predicting certain things about people. Except that those things are so vague that of course it's going to predict things about people. However, that is not evidence for astrology. For it to be evidence for astrology, you need to show that those predictions are meaningful. It's easy to make a statement like, what goes up must come down. That is a prediction that, in the majority of cases at least, is true, but is not as predictive as something like general relativity. Yes, theism predicts that the universe had to have had a beginning, and that beginning was caused by something, and in theism's case, that is God. But how meaningful is that prediction? It is very easy to predict that the universe, or at least the universe as we know it, had a beginning. Many religions have predicted that, and each religion that has predicted that predicts that in a different way. So that kind of stuff does undermine trying to use it as an argument for theism.
Now, theism posits that there's a God who is, amongst other things, omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, and exists necessarily. So, strictly speaking, theism predicts that there is a necessary being, because if theism were true, the probability that there's a necessary being would be 100%. Now, the contingency argument establishes in the first stage that there's a necessary being. So, before you've even started getting into arguments that this necessary being is omnipotent or has a mind or whatever, you've already shown that theism has made a correct prediction, there is a necessary being.
Well, yes, that is a correct prediction, but I can also state that the universe has just always existed, just in a different state. That also predicts a necessary being, that being being the previous state of the universe, and also doesn't have all the other fluff that comes with theism. You do not need to assume that the being has some kind of consciousness and that that consciousness knows everything.
It doesn't matter that a necessary being is logically consistent with other worldviews. As long as the probability of a necessary being, given these alternatives to theism, is less than 100%, the probability of theism will go up.
That is not how it works at all. The probability of theism being true remains the same regardless of whether any other worldview predicts a necessary being. To use an example that I think most people are familiar with, let's say that I have a 6-sided die, and I roll it, and it comes up as a 6. What is the probability that the next roll will be a 6? Well, of course, it is 1 in 6. Let's say that I roll that die again and it does come up as 6. What is the probability that the next roll will be a 6? That also is 1 in 6. No matter how many times I roll a 6, the probability that the next roll will be a 6 is 1 in 6. Although, if I do roll enough 6s, it might start to look like the die is loaded. The probability of rolling a 6 is independent of any other roll of the die. Likewise, the probability of theism being true is independent of what other worldviews predict. And yes, I know that I just described the gambler's fallacy. I just prefer to explain my reasoning rather than just say, oh, this is a fallacy.
Now, the more specific the prediction that your theory correctly makes, the more this verified prediction will raise the probability of your theory.
Okay, that part is true. If you make a prediction, the more specifics that you have in that prediction that turn out to be true, the more likely your hypothesis is to be true.
And the probability of a necessary being with unlimited power is also 100% given theism. So, a given cosmological argument will be made stronger if it includes a second stage that establishes that this necessary being does indeed possess unlimited power.
Yes, but you need to make an argument as to why the necessary being for the universe has unlimited power. That is the argument that I have yet to hear.
It will get even stronger if you establish that this necessary being has a mind, and so on. All that is great, but again, it's technically all optional. You just need the first stage.
The problem is, though, is that the first stage is so vague as to render it completely useless as an argument for theism. In fact, I would say that the more specifics that you add that you cannot show, for example, the necessary being having a mind, the more damaging that is to your argument. Why is this? Well, it's because of Occam's razor. You're adding more and more assumptions that you cannot show to be true. And on top of that, the prediction in the first place is so vague that anybody can make that prediction.
So instead of thinking of a successful stage 2 like a binary works or doesn't work, you should instead see it as more of a continuum. The strength of the argument goes up incrementally as the sort of being your argument proves is brought more and more into line with theism. Instead of the gap problem, I think a better name that avoids presentation problems might be the stack problem. The idea is, every time the theist argues the necessary being has an additional godlike property, the probability of theism goes up. So if their stage 2 needs some work, it's because the stack of godlike properties that they've established isn't big enough, and they need to work on that. This doesn't misleadingly imply that the argument is worthless until the theist has done this additional work.
The problem is, though, is that I have not heard that additional work being done. Yes, people say that, oh, there needs to be a cause for the universe, but they have yet to do the work that says that that cause must be a god. If you can establish that this cause has to have properties like a mind, then yes, it strengthens your argument. But just saying that this cause has to have properties like a mind without first establishing it, that actually hurts your argument. The less assumptions that you have to make, the higher the probability that you are correct. Anyway, that's it for this video. I was hoping to hear some arguments as to why the cause, or necessary being as he puts it, must have a mind or must be a god. Unfortunately, that was not presented. I get that that's not the point of the video, but it's still a bit disappointing. But anyway, leave a like and subscribe if you like this video. Leave a comment letting me know what you'd like to see me make videos on in the future. I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching. But anyway, leave a like and subscribe if you like this video. Leave a comment letting me know what you'd like me to make for future videos. As always, a big shout out to my $20 or more patrons: Hugh Jarsz, M.C.Nutkin, SHaKie, Jett Alone, Nathaniel Muller, Vermont1777, Wolfie, Morrie, Graymore Ghost, KidVicious, Sacha Campbell, definitely not NASA, Craig D'Amelio, and Richard M Chapman. If you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon. There should be a link there. But anyway, I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching.